Assalamu alaikum. Hello there. And what about ye? It is 2025. Welcome to the first Are You Not Qatartained, the interviews of the new year as we look back on January of this year. Are You Not Qatartained brought to you by Cinema Scholars, the movie site by movie fans for movie fans, and of course Qatartainment. We're at the interviews for January equals guns, gore, and ghouls. January used to be the dumping ground month for many movie studios. It was after the winter holidays rush, it was before awards season. But now we're gifted with guns, gore, and ghouls. A time of awesome action and gruesome gore. So I'm here to celebrate that with three very awesome guests I've spoken to very recently. First up, Michael Polish, who directed, of course, Alarm. And if you're listening in Qatar, you can still catch it in Novo Cinemas. Alarm, of course, stars my guy, Sly Stallone, in a supporting role alongside Scott, son of Clint Eastwood. A real old school action which you can still enjoy. Next up, Ms. Sasha Rainbow, the crafter of Grafted, exclusively on Shudder. A very, very cool body horror, or as I coined, face horror, you can enjoy right now. And last but not least, Mr. Philip Gelatt, the director of a new series called First Word on Horror, where he speaks to a writer each and every episode about their inspirations, their life stories, and what horror means to them. A true treat if you're a horror fan. So as usual, you'll hear a bit of the trailer, a clip from either the movie or TV show, and then straight into the interviews, and then afterwards, I'll sign you off. Until then, please like, please subscribe, please follow, please comment on wherever platform you're listening on, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever. Every single thumbs up, every single comment helps immensely to either Cinema Scholars or Qatartainment or my good old self. So please enjoy. So over to Mr. Michael Polish, but here is a clip from Alarm.
Clock's running. Don't waste it.
We are not here to unleash chaos. We are here to define it.
The final hour won't be born.
Good morning. It'll be nice to have lunch with another couple, like normal people.
That's us. Normal people.
What are you doing after this?
Mr. Polish, how are you, good sir?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm really good, thanks. So let's ring the alarm bell. Here we are. So what first hit me, of course, was your cast. Totally
Right.
unexpected treats in here. So can you just tell us briefly how you came up with this amazing cast of Scott, son of Clint Eastwood, my guy Slag, we'll talk about it in a minute, Mike Coulter, and of course, not forgetting Willa Fitzgerald, who has her own movie going on this one. So tell us about how you assembled this amazing cast.
Scott, I was talking to for about a year while we were getting this project. And Sly, I've known for about 20 years, which was very helpful in getting us together on this. We wanted to work with each other for a while. And then, Willa was after those two was Willa. And that trifecta was enough. And then obviously when Mike Coulter gets involved, it just brings a whole nother element, which I really enjoyed having all those people to play with.
Yeah, definitely. And that really comes across. So like we say, maybe in the previous decades, we're talking about action movies as a genre itself. Maybe in the previous decades, this would have been just Joe's story. But now we have as Laura holding her own. Is that one of the things that attracted you to Alexander Veish's scripts? There's something completely different here. We've got a Mr. and Mrs. thing going on, perhaps?
Yeah.
What key aspects are attracting you to it?
I love that they were married spies. It's so, it's a duplicit relationship, your secrets, and to have two stories split and interweave. I've always enjoyed movies like that.
And is that gave you more to play with, so to speak? Because the story pretty straightforward, if we can say. There's coming on the run. He needs help from an old mentor, but then we have, his wife, and she's on this trip and he's on that journey. Is that something that you could play with? Because of course, people know you from maybe The Force of Nature, big hit for you. So is this something new for you to play with?
Yes, definitely. You get to develop the people more, their characters more. you get to know, because they're not bouncing off another person, individually you get to know each character probably slightly better, and that's always fun. And then you could spend time one-on-one with that actor more. Spending time with Willow was great because she was doing fight sequences, and it was just about her. And when I was with Scott, it was just about him. And so I was able to have a relationship with them both together and apart.
And it pays off really well because you get to go, like you say, into real depth with those characters. You actually do care about them and you want to see them back together again. But you say, they're actually having fun. Yeah, I'm having fun with this guy and Chester, of course. And then we have Char as well. Yeah, it's great. So let's talk about my guy, Sly.
Yeah, the old god. He's an old god.
Yeah. So you're actually the third director I've got to speak to who's worked with Sly. So of course I spoke to the director of John Rambo, and I got to speak with Michael Hellstrom as well, who of course directed Sly with Arnie in their first big picture together, Escape Plan. And he gave me a really great anecdote about Sly, where they were setting up one scene and Sly turned up early, and Michael said, Sly, thanks for coming, but we're not ready yet. You can go back to your trailer, go back and chill, whatever. And Sly said, no, I'm a director. One thing that pisses me off is when actors turn up late. I'm going to be here. And Michael said that was one of his greatest memories of being on set with him and Arnie, who were just like excited school kids. Do you have any similar anecdotes you can share on Sly?
You know, the idea of to work with a master and him allowing him, he allows you to direct. But what's nice is that if anything's not working, he can fix it quite fast, quite quickly because of his, decades of filmmaking. And to watch him when he was coming in and out of the scenes, grabbing guns and learning Scott and doing, the spy stuff, he really knew guns really well. And so coming in and out of scenes, he would say what would work with the gun and not work with the gun. And previously having done, the movies he's done that are gun heavy, it was a delight to see how comfortable he was with ammunition and guns.
Yeah, of course, that plays into his character of Chester, who's been around and he's sort of semi-retired and one last trip, shall we say? And that leads to your sort of knowledge of the genre itself. I don't know if you listen to the Hot Mic podcast, but we have Jeff and John Roca on there, and they were talking this morning about something I thought was really interesting, how the genre itself is sort of redeveloping. And we have guys like Frank Grillo, we have guys like Jason Statham, and we have guys like Jared Butler on a good day, really redefine the action genre. They're taking it back to not mindless, but back to the idea of the lone gunslinger and the guy who comes into town, sorts things out, or is back for one last job, or is a hired hand. Do you think the action genre is getting back to where it should be, which is fairly respectable, but also great cinematic entertainment?
Probably very, very 1980s. That decade had a lot of these movies. Coming out of the 70s, you had some action, but then you got to 1980s and steroids seemed to blow these things up, and box office was a big deal. So you started to see movies get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think this harkens back to a 1980s type movie, maybe early 90s, where character was just as important as the explosion. And I believe these guys that are action heroes love to play characters too. So you're probably seeing more development with their point of view and how they're going to play the part, as opposed to just having explosions.
Yeah, because Jason Statham himself is going to be the new film this year, The Working Man, which of course is written by Sly, which is something I can't wait for. So it's one of these hidden gems I think I'm definitely going to promote big time. And I just want to ask you, sir, as a director of great experience here at Cinema Scholars, we always try to encourage aspiring filmmakers. So you have people like myself sort of dipping their toe into directing. Can you give us any words of wisdom for any people who want to start off in directing?
If your movie's not getting made, it's because of you. You can't put blame on anybody. That's an easy way out. And and I say that because you just have to make it. And making is your terms, how you're going to do it is up to you. It's so easy with all the technology that we didn't have. We started on film, cutting on film. The technology is there to make really beautiful work. You can travel all over the world with very less equipment. You can get into spaces with smaller cameras. So there's no really excuse not making your movie making a movie. It might not be perfect, but nobody's movie's perfect. The minute you say action, something's good. You're losing something every time, you know? So I always say, just make it. Go make it.
We'll make it. Excellent. You heard it here first from Mr. Puss. Okay,
That's our new slogan. We're going to put it on t-shirts.
here we go. So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to hearing great things about the movie, and have a great day. Take care, sir.
Look at you. You look ridiculous.
What have you done?
Everyone is going to love me.
Sasha Rainbow, how are you, ma'am?
I am excellent. Super excited about Grafted being birthed into the world.
Oh, I bet. So this is actually your first feature film as well. How does that feel? It's step up after your handful of really cool shorts into a whole hour and a half of awesomeness. How did that feel?
It feels bloody brilliant. I mean, we all know that that's sort of like a horror story unto itself, trying to get your first feature off the ground, and for such a cool script to land on my doorstep. I mean, yeah, it's fucking awesome. And yeah, couldn't have wished for anything more. I was actually working on something similarly to that for about a year and a half, like thematically back here in lockdown in LA. And when Grafted came through my inbox, it was almost like the gods had sent it to me, because it was so thematically similar to what I'd been like pouring all my energy into, that I was like, this is an absolute hard yes for me.
That's great. So it's been widely praised and widely called upon. Face Off meets Mean Girls, which I think is great. I also felt a bit of a sprinkle of Carrie in there. I don't know if you agree, but there's something in there. I thought, something Carrie about this. Of course, we don't want to give too much away, of course, but my first note I made about watching it, I watched it twice now, luckily. And my first note is, whoa, already here. Boom. That first scene, so, should we say, economical? We get all the little layers in there, and we get some, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but whoa, the gore is flying. Scene 1. How important was that first scene to you to get just right?
Oh, I mean, it was so important, because we take hopefully the audience on a bit of a journey, and when things get really, really crazy, till things get really, really crazy. So that first scene, it's like, I think everyone has a founding moment on who they're going to become. And I think in order to kind of experience the journey in our kind of modern day, like you said, Mean Girls world, we really needed to understand Way's founding moment, so to speak. And it is horrific and gory. And I wanted to let everybody know that this is the ride you're going to be taking, but bear with us. Let's get to know her a little bit more in her present day. So yeah, it was really, really important. And obviously working with a younger version of herself as well, getting that right, that was a really interesting journey.
Yeah, definitely. And those little layers of darkness in there as well, like her little joy of feeding the snake and things like that. So we think, oh, she's a little angel, she's so cute. Oh, maybe she's not, as we find out later. More layers, more layers. And as we get older, of course, it must be an actor's dream, some of the ladies in your cast, to play all the different characters playing each other. That must have been a lot of fun for Eden and Jess. How did they come to join the film? What was the casting process like?
First of all, it's absolutely bonkers. I'll just tell you that. It's like, not only do you only have 25 shooting days, you're also working with young women in sometimes their first role, to take on this epic journey. And not only that, like you said, play different versions of themselves and each other. And I wasn't even sure they would be able to pull it off. First of all, Eden was just a no-brainer. I mean, I just love how much she is able to encompass the sort of Mean Girls aspect, but then really go into the deep, raw, violent version that she plays. And then it was really about creating a bridge between all of them. So we did some exercises, and I only had 2 rehearsal days with them. So we didn't have a long time. I was like, "Oh, we're going to be able to pull this off." And I got them to kind of experience their journey together. So we sat in a group and we got each of them to sort of talk about where they were at mentally. We kept going around in the group and they would just bridge off each other's experiences. And then one of the other things was just the physicality of it all. Like, I thought about the evolution of man and how, those images of, us Homo sapiens, hunched over, and how we grow into these sort of humans in the sort of visual sense. And for me, that was really interesting because I think Wei, she almost starts really small and she hides from the world, and by the end she's kind of flying. So it was about sort of mapping out that kind of physicality of that journey as well between the 3 of them. And I'm just like amazed at, what an impressive job they did. They were so much fun to work with.
And so much fun just to watch, because I just want to talk about the horror genre in general now, because I was late to the genre. I was a sensitive little child, but then I discovered horror and said, I'll give this a go. And body horror became my thing. The Thing is my favorite movie. The Fly, a close second. And also, I read an interview you did with Little Black Book, and you said one of your inspirations was The Wizard of Oz, which of course is everyone's first horror movie. Yeah.
Totally.
One. So how did those movies influence you? Because obviously maybe the color palettes, perhaps, because obviously the Mean Girl aspect again, the pinks and the very vibrant colors throughout. Do they maybe all the way back from Wizard of Oz influence your color palette to be bright and vibrant, and obviously the red of the blood is a constant theme throughout? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. I never thought of The Wizard of Oz as a horror film, but you're absolutely right. You've just my brain. I think I was also late to the game because I basically freaked myself out around 13 with The Ring. I watched The Ring in the cinema. I watched the Japanese version. Then I went back to the cinema. And after that, I couldn't have a television in my room. I couldn't watch the TV turning off. Like, after that, my brain is too sensitive. But then as I got into my film career, I was like, you know what? I think I need to make a horror film and get over this, So this was a very cathartic. But in terms of the color palette and everything, I actually I didn't want it to be, let's just say, I wanted the universe to be its own thing and to reflect this story, this coming of age, this kind of, as you said, Carrie-ish kind of coming of age, a body horror film. And I felt like that world of, pinks and pastels popping against the red is a kind of candy colored reflection of the end of innocence, and so I thought that was far more interesting than leaning into the many cool tropes of horror, which we did do. We went and saw houses that were sort of falling apart and dilapidated and cool creepy wallpaper. I just thought, we've seen this before. How about we kind of really go hard into something that feels a little bit more fresh and a little bit more relevant to this story of the ideal of beauty and the facades that we present to the world. So that's kind of how we came about with that.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. So it just really sort of pink is sort of a calming color, I find. But then you have the real boom of the blood and you feel that starkness. And you do jump a little bit sometimes when you see that, for sure. Back to the game, an idea of horror and body horror. You've created the subgenre of face horror. And I thought it really interesting that, the thing about body horror in particular is you want to look away, but you can't because you don't know what you're looking at. And then the whole idea of it could happen to you. So that idea of when we have the moment with the boyfriend, with that incident that's called the unpeeling incident, sometimes you don't know, which is obviously a credit to you and your VFX department, makeup department. You don't know if it is makeup or is it VFX. How much fun did you have playing with the practical and also the VFX?
I mean, it is mental with the time constraints and the amount that we had to do. It was a lot of fun. It was very much, if you want to know the answer, it was a blend of the two. Our Post House came in and just like took some certain elements to just the next level, which was a blessing because we could never have afforded the time or the money to like do that practically. But yeah, I mean, come on, like there's nothing better than like, without giving too much away, a bubble of blood emerging from somebody's forehead before it starts to fall off. I mean, they're the highlights. When that all goes down, I mean, everyone just has so much fun with it. And that's the key to body horror, right? It's basically gore and sound, really.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's that's the really fun part, trying to create the most visceral experience you can for the audience. And I mean, it's a testament to when you know it's not real because you're making it and you're still having the reaction, then you know you got it.
Yeah, because the movie has been around. You've done the festivals, of course, the festival circuit. You've done some awards, award-winning, in fact. Congratulations. What moments in a packed house have really made the audience go, "Wah!" And you go, any moments stand out?
I mean, what I would say, when I saw it with an audience for the first time at the Chicago International Film Festival in the Music Box Theater, a really old and a beautiful theater, it was so exciting, was rather than specific moments, I think what people maybe weren't expecting is the humor in it. You'll have the whole crowd cringe with disgust and then burst into laughter. And that was really a fun kind of melody that I wanted to play with, that kind of comic relief after something completely disturbing and disgusting. And I think the Mean Girls Face Off kind of analogy is really interesting because it kind of does lean into that satirical humor that is throughout it. But hopefully we don't ever sort of disappoint in terms of the disgust factor.
Oh yeah, very fine balance because you have to have that comedy element. And moments are laugh out loud funny when we have over the fence fights. That was just, what is this? Is this the funniest thing? And that's your favorite scene, is that right?
It is my favorite scene. Yeah, it's played by Eden with the neighbor. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have just some really amazing icons of New Zealand actors in there. One of them is playing the neighbor next door, the nosy neighbor, and I just thought that Eden's visceral, violent, hilarious sort of enjoyment playing this role of this beautiful blonde is so satisfying after you've seen how meek and shy she was at the beginning, and hidden bodies in tow in the darkness behind her. It's all very it's definitely my favorite moment.
I'll definitely stand out for sure. And I just want to go back to the point about this is your first feature after you made a number of shorts. So at Cinema Scholars, we always have people who are aspiring directors and things like that, want to get into filmmaking but don't know how. So I always like to ask directors that we have on, can you give us some wisdom, some words of advice, get them over that line to get making movies and be one day interviewed by me? Imagine that. So any words of wisdom you can offer, Sasha?
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought about this a lot, actually, because I didn't go to film school. So I feel very passionately about people feeling like they can, take this route without going down the sort of traditional line. And one thing I would say, and it sounds annoying, but just make stuff. And I know that sounds really hard. Like, how do I make stuff? First of all, you have a cell phone. Roger Rodriguez had to save 7,000, to save enough film to make El Mariachi by putting himself through medical experiments. We don't even need to do that. We literally can start with a cell phone. But second of all, if you're really lost, I've always thought that the most obvious way is find people who are already making short films, feature films, offer to get involved, offer to help out. It's a community-based art form, and the minute you insert yourself into other people's projects, you will learn so much. You can easily start to make contacts and connections with people who are also really creative and who you vibe off, and then start your own project. So you can't really do it alone. And I wish I'd done that sooner, actually.
There we go. Well, a perfect way to end, a perfect way to close. Sasha, it's been such a pleasure. So I'll be pumping up Grafted, dropping on Shutter on the 24th of January, 2025. I can't wait to share it with my readers and viewers. Sasha, good luck with the release on streaming. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. So fun talking.
It's 1996. I'm at Florida State University. A knock comes on the door. I'm up there writing a story like I always am. And it's my friend Ryan Van Cleve from class. And he says, "Hey man, come on, I want to take you to a movie." I said, "No, I'm writing." And he said, No, I'm taking you to a movie." And I was like, "No, come on, Ryan, I'm almost done with this story. I'm going to lose the end of it if I don't do it right now, so I need to stay here and write." And it finally became easier to just put a jacket on and go to this stupid movie with Ryan than to argue with him at the door. And so we go to the theater, and he's taken me to Scream, and sitting there in that audience, I really feel like the folds of my brain were reorienting themselves. Like all the homework I've been doing my whole life, watching endless amounts of slashers, was suddenly worth it. This was the test, And for the next 6 nights, I was back at that theater watching Scream. I saw it 7 nights in a row in its opening run, and I've watched it hundreds of times since then. I'm always reading the screenplay. I'm always reading Kevin Williamson interviews, Wes Craven interviews. I think that movie really changed the course of my life, and I'm glad that it happened when I was like 24, because I can remember it,
Philip Gelatt, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. Okay, first word on horror.
Yeah.
Now, my viewers will be sick of me saying this. I'm like a broken record, but I'm still a newbie to horror, shall we say, because I was a sensitive child. And there was just one day I clicked and I thought, okay, well, this is amazing. I've been missing out. And I was going through a phase of Kurt Russell for some reason. And every listing was, The Thing is his best performance. I said, I had to give this a go. And boom, it's jumped straight to the top of my favorite movies. Okay. And now I'm cool with it, if you like. Okay. And it took me down the aisle of The Fly and all these various bits and pieces. And Predator is my second favorite movie, the Arnie version, of course. And I'll just do anything and everything for horror. What is your horror tale that got you into the genre?
Oh my God. Okay. This is such a good question. So I also was a sensitive child. I was terrified of horror and horror adjacent things. Let me tell you the things that scared the absolute shit out of me when I was a kid. So they include Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I don't know if you recall Large Marge. Just the claymation face. And I was like, nope, never going to watch that again. Nothing like that. Thank you. The library ghost in Ghostbusters. Also, absolutely scared the pants off of me. The cover of Ghoulies. It's a Gremlins knockoff. There's a little ghoulie in a toilet. My friends rented the movie at a sleepover, and I was like, not watching that. Sorry. And then I got into horror probably in my teenage years. I saw Alien for the first time, and that was the movie. I was probably 14. Well, to be totally honest, I loved Aliens first because it was like an action rock and roll good time. But then I went back and saw Alien, and I was like, oh, look at this. Isn't this interesting? And I can handle this, and it is sort of science fictional and it's horror. So, and around that time, I have to say, given what Fresh Run Horror is about, I also started to read a lot of horror. So I read Stephen King, and I read Anne Rice, and I got into Clive Barker and a lot of other writers. So somewhere in between seeing Alien and starting to read horror really sort of opened that genre up for me.
Yeah, and like you say, it's such a literacy-based genre, isn't it? Because I discovered Frankenstein when I was at school, and I thought, well, this is one of the best books ever. And of course, that was around the time of Kenneth Branagh's movie version, which is so-so. But the book's incredible. And of course, you go back to Dracula, and you go back to everything like that. And of course, we're dealing with writers. Let's talk about your program, of course. So you're dealing with these 5 writers. And of course, going into it, we have the misconception that it's going to be some sort of floating heads. Or each episode will have a theme, and you'll have this person delivering a quote, this person, soundbite, etc., etc. But you really get to spend time with these people. And that's a really special concept. How did you decide on one episode, one writer, instead of the floating heads documentary style?
Yeah, I mean, so it started, honestly, because I... Well, there are sort of 2 entry points. One, there's an author named, he's deceased now. His name is Peter Straub, and he was a contemporary of Stephen King's. And I for whatever reason, I was righteously indignant that he was not as popular as Stephen King. So I was like, I'm going to make a documentary about Peter Straub. Then he went off and died, so I didn't get a chance to do that. But then I'm good friends with a number of the authors who are in the series. One of them being Laird Barron. You'll know him. He has the eye patch, and he got very, very sick and nearly died. He talks about it in the course of the series. And so I thought, well, I don't want him to go off and Peter Straub on me before I have a chance to get him to sit down and talk about his life. And so that's where it started, really, was me wanting to sit Laird down and talk to him about both he has a really unique life. He grew up in rural Alaska. He's missing an eye. He ran the Iditarod dog sled race many times when he was in his 20s. So that idea that an author might write incredible things, but might also have interesting biographical insights, really was the starting point. And what I tried to do in the interviews really was show sort of this interplay between biography and work. I mean, I think it's dangerous to say you have to have a unique biography to write unique works of fiction, because I don't think that's true. But I do think that considering an author's biography, and where they're coming from when you're considering their work, does enrich the work in a certain way. So it was really and I just love authors and personalities, and each of these authors has they've got a real perspective and a real personality that comes through in the interviews. So,
and it can be more different. So let's go through the writers themselves. So first up, we have Stephen Graham Jones.
Yeah.
I love Dear Final Girls. I want that as a podcast. I want that on Spotify. So I just listen to that over and over and over. That's just an amazing piece of work. I mean, it's just wonderful. And then we have Elizabeth Hand, of course, with her story, The Macabre. Really creepy and just gets under your skin, definitely. They have Paul Tremblay, Marianne Enriquez. Well, she has a story to tell. And of course, your friend, Laird Barron, of course. Yeah. So you were acquaintance with these, and how did you approach them about the whole project in general? Did you just said, go, let's just talk about your life and how it influenced your work? Or was it just, let's see where this conversation goes?
I sort of, when we started with Laird, as I said, I sort of tripped him, to be totally honest, and was like, oh, I tricked him by saying what we ended up doing. Because originally I was just like, I'm just going to do something about him. So I said to him, I'm going to make this thing about a bunch of different authors, and you're going to be one of them. And Laird's a very gracious guy. So he's like, oh, as long as it's not just me. So then once I'd done the Laird interview and had cut it together and understood how it was going to work, it was then easier to go and ask the other authors to come and participate. So I knew Stephen Graham Jones a little bit, so he was an easy one to ask. Paul, I'm actually quite good friends with. Mariana and Elizabeth, I didn't know at all before approaching them, but I got introduced to them via the other authors because they all sort of know each other, right? So I was able to, use one to get to the other. And I really just sort of explained exactly what it is. I mean, I would give them a list of questions, and I do biographical research first, so I knew what to ask. Basically, send them a list of questions that were biographical, but then also about their thoughts on the horror genre, their thoughts on the writing process, and all these kinds of things. But I tried to ask them. You can't really detect it in the episodes, I don't think, but I tried to ask them always a series of questions that were exactly the same, so that we could get different answers to the same question and see how different writers might respond differently to the same question, if that makes sense. And they were all pretty game. I mean, nobody turned us down, and they were all very excited to do it, which is nice. I mean, it's just, it was so much fun.
Yeah, you have a fine line between the autobiography of their work and the work themselves. And at times you do forget, this is about horror movie writers, because they've been through so many different experiences. You think, are these like a true crime survivors documentary instead of a horror writing documentary? So really like that, you dip in and forget while you're writing, while you're watching, you think, back to the horror again. There it is. Yeah, that's amazing. Let's talk about the genre at the moment. Like I said, I'm still easing my way into some areas of horror. So I usually do it I have two ways of doing it. I either watch reactions, like on Real Rejects or something like that. Yeah. And that's how I knew, for example, the Terrifier franchise wasn't for me. So, the way they're reacting is how I would react, shall we say. Or I'll watch a horror movie in the middle of broad daylight by a window on my iPad. So if I get too scared, stuck out the window. So what is your feeling about the horror genre at the moment? Because this is a really exciting time, because we have the pendulum swinging. from the Terrifier, which is, sort of wrapped up torture porn, really, perhaps. And we also have the more character driven, the really well written Under Your Skin as well. What do you think has been the highlight of the last few years?
Oh, I mean, so as you say, I think like horror at the moment is almost considered like um the savior of movie making in a certain financially at least. I mean, it feels like that is which is great. I mean, it's great for the genre, and it's great that it is there's so many different flavors of it, as you say, out there. I mean, personally, I love every type of horror. So I mean, from Terrifier to Nosferatu to Red Rooms to, I mean, I am an equal opportunity consumer of all types of the genre. So for a person like me, it's, like being a kid in a candy store or whatever that turn of phrase is. It's sort of like, there's just so very much to watch. That it's just great. I that being said, I will I will say that there's a little bit of like the punk, like reactionary, not reaction is the wrong word, but like contrarian to me that's a little bit like, oh, all these horror tourists now, now it's popular. Like now I've been here for years, damn it. Like it's
Good horror tourists. I love that.
yeah, but I mostly mean that jokingly. So it is it's super exciting. And I guess have very strong opinions on almost every horror movie that I see, but I always try to couch them in the terms of like, I'm just happy that these movies are getting made. Like, I'm so excited that Eggers got to make that version of Nosferatu. Like, if you look at Jordan Peele's work, I'm so excited that he's gotten to make those movies in the way that he's made them, and seemingly with an incredible amount of creative control. Like, that's all incredibly exciting. But I think it's, just the other thing to say about the genre, my favorite version of it is, if it is made relatively cheaply, you can sort of get away with things because people, money people aren't necessarily 100% paying attention to what you're doing. And I think that's incredibly exciting. I mean, it makes it potentially a genre that's very creatively free in the best versions of it. And that's, I think we're sort of in that place right now, more or less. And it's great. I love it.
And do you ever see a day that horror would be recognized at, say, the Golden Globes? Because obviously, Oscars might be another millennium. But do you think maybe there might be a category for best horror performance? Because there's some recognition sometimes for a very specific performance. But you think there will be a category one day alongside / musical comedy as horror?
I've never thought about that question before in my life. Probably because of the aforementioned contrarian view that I like horror to be sort of like, like the dirty genre that people don't want to talk about. I mean, Emma points out The Substance was, of course, nominated for Demi Moore, but I think that's like, it's an outlier certainly, and it's I don't know if you've seen The Substance, but it's insane
Yes.
that movie got. I mean, her performance is great, but it's So I don't know. I think I'll say this to my bifurcated opinion on things. I would be excited for horror if it got some category, but part of me would also be annoyed because I've been like, because it should be like the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, not the Golden Globes. But I don't know. I mean, I think there are moments. Sorry, just by way of an anecdote, like I've had arguments in the past with people about like what really is the definition of the horror genre. So. And I'm thinking about that because of Silence of the Lambs, which in my view, is absolutely a horror film, and of course nominated and won a number of Oscars. But I've had people tell me that no, that's a thriller. It's just like that's as if they can't.
Oh, they will let it be a horror.
They will let it be a horror. They won't give it that. But it's about a man who cuts women's skin off, and what more do you want from a horror film? It's quite obviously horror. So. I don't know. It's an interesting question. I love to think about the genre in general, and it's sort of the way it's perceived and also the way it gets created. So it's a good question. I guess I would say, to answer your question, no, I don't think the Golden Globes will ever make a horror only category, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, there's an open goal there, the gory category, but let's see.
Yeah.
But yes, I completely agree at this moment in time. So just back to the classics of the genre. So I was just thinking the other day, the big three. Who deserves a remake? Who deserves a reboot? Who should be laid to rest forever? Freddy, Jason, Mike. What do you think?
Oh my God. Okay. So who deserves a remake? Who deserves what's the second one?
So who deserves a sequel? Who deserves a reboot? Who should be laid to rest forever?
Okay. Um, Michael Myers should be laid to rest forever. Halloween's done. We've digested it enough times. We're through with that. I think that Freddy deserves a oh, god damn, this is a hard question. Freddy deserves a remake. He had a middling remake. I think that it's time to do something more interesting with him. And like, because his realm is the realm of dreams, that dreams change, teenagers change. Like we could do a great new Freddy. And I think Jason deserves a sequel because I love to think about Jason as, I already have this pet theory. Like, I love to think about the Jason movies as if they had all been conceived like Game of Thrones or something, as if it was all planned out in advance. So I love this. I love this idea that it would be so that we would do a sequel of the Jason movies now and say that it was in continuity with the previous ones. I think that's a lot of fun. So that's a great question, and those are my answers.
Great answers too. First word in horror. When can we expect a sequel of the next word in horror, and to expect down the line the last word in horror from Philip?
Oh, so there's so many authors that I want to talk to and do episodes on. So my hope is, our first season starts the first week in February and runs through May. My hope is that we would start to do more interviews later this year. I really want to go. There's a number of UK writers that I really want to talk to. So my hope is that we can do like first run horror international, and start to get writers in other countries. So I don't exactly know when, but we will definitely make more at some point for sure.
That's awesome. Okay, so the floor is yours, Philip, for the last few moments of our time together. Why should people watch your first word on horror?
So if you are a fan of the horror genre in print or on screen, you should absolutely watch the show because it's important to think about the artists that make the genre that we love. If you're not a fan of horror at all, that also applies. I think, not to get into dicey AI territory, but I think at this moment there are these questions about what does it mean? What does human creativity mean? And where does it come from? And what's the point of it? And that is a subtext to this series. And I think watching, the human beings who are at like the core of the creative process talk about their lives and talk about the process of creating is just, it's something that we should all think about, whether we love horror, whether we just love stories, or whether we just love being human. I think it's for everybody. That's my broad pitch.
It's for everybody for sure. And yeah, I can't wait to promote it on my site, on my YouTube channel. Philip, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
And there we have it, folks. That was Are You Not Qatartained? The interviews, January equals guns, gore and ghouls, with me, your host, Glenn Dower. Please follow me on Instagram at DowerFilm. Please go over to YouTube right now for Cinema Scholars channel. Click on there, and Qatartainment as well. Give us a follow, give us a like, and share. Share around to anyone who you think might really enjoy our content. We work very hard at Qatartainment. We cover gaming, we cover cosplay, we cover movies and TV all the time on a daily basis. As we also do on Cinema Scholars, we celebrate the latest and greatest movies, news, and reviews from today and yesteryear. So it truly is something for everyone. So that's it from me, and I hope you've been Qatartained. Till February.